Hello humans, Master DinnerFlax here, and today I'll be going over a deck that it's a goat control deck. And this is going to be part of a new series I'm going to start called Ye Olde Yugioh. And I wanted to go over this deck. This deck is, as you can already tell, this is not normal goat control deck. This is the deck that was way more successful than goat control. In its own format, goat control was not even the most successful deck. This deck was, and it's known as Chaos Phoenix. This one, multiple shonen jumps. It won worlds for their time, and I believe it either won nationals or top nationals, one of the two. This deck was the underdog deck that everyone thought just wouldn't work, but it did the best. And I want to go over this deck because I'm starting to see that people who play goat control, they're under the assumption that goat control was the only thing played and very little other things were played, when that was just very wrong. Like, this deck was the deck. This deck was so powerful for its time. And yeah, like, this did more than goat control ever did. And I want to show this off because I think it'd be something for you guys to see that you would enjoy if you play goat control, because it's another take on goat control that is much different from old versions. So let's get into Chaos Phoenix. BLS with priority will no, I'm not even going to explain that. Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that last part right. Pretty much when this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard by a card effect, during your next standby phase, you special summon it, and then it's a heavy storm. But the heavy storm effect wasn't the most powerful part. It's the fact that 2400 back in the day was way too much to deal with without destruction. So it's why that card was actually at 1, which is kind of interesting. But then we got Hand of Nephthys. This card, if you tribute it and another monster on your side of the field, you can immediately summon Phoenix from your hand or deck, preferably from your deck. Hand in really bad scenarios, but pretty much with a Scapegoat token you could summon a 2400 beater in a time where some of the strongest monsters had 300 attack. Then you got Jinzo and Parshath, very powerful tribute monsters. This card was one of the reasons why Scapegoat was the most popular card, because this was the most popular card against the most popular card. And Jinzo was at 1 for a very long time, very strong beater for so long. Took forever for this card to get off the limited list. Then instead of 2 Faiths, which normal Goat players play, there's 3 Faiths and 2 Apprentice Magicians. This is kind of interesting because Faith at 3, this was in such a slow format with such powerful draw cards, you didn't want to see the same of every card. You didn't want to see 2 ofs, because your hand had to be kind of like a toolbox. You wanted a card for each situation, and seeing more than 1 Faith, or God forbid you see 3 Faiths, or a way to get to a 3rd Faith, a lot of your hand is just blank cards. But it all boils down to the fact that Faith was so powerful in this format because all the spells were unbroken and the format was so slow that it didn't matter. Like, Faith was never a dead card. Like, even getting back like lesser spells was just too powerful. And to go with the Faiths, you got 2 Apprentice Magicians. Now, this is actually pretty cool because the Apprentice Magicians, when they die, they not only put a dark in your graveyard, but they get you a light, which will go to the graveyard soon enough for this guy. And on top of that, if you normal summon this card while you have a breaker that's already used its effect, you could put a spell counter back on breaker and destroy another back row, whatever it would be. And then we got 2 warriors in the form of Blade Knight and DD Warrior Lady. DD Warrior Lady was staple in literally any deck. And Blade Knight was very strong at this time, stopping flip effects, being 2k, both of those effects very powerful for the time. Sonya, just a generic, very powerful searcher, just search things that you needed. Sinister Serpent, Hand of Nephthys, any of your Faith Engine, Spirit Reaper, Then we got Tribe and Sinister. Sinister just nulled effects. This was before I got the unplayable errata. It just nulled cost. It made cards so easy. And this card was like a dark hole. You needed it. You needed it for the time. It was too impactful not to play. And then here's an interesting choice. Kaiku. A lot of GOAT players now are starting to switch to this. Back in the day, it was not played very often because it just didn't seem that impactful. But not only did it stop Chaos Monsters, but it also stopped Book of Life, which were two very powerful and very played cards at the time. And not only that, but if you got your opponent to send their Sinisters to the grave and you attack with Kaiku, not only did you just get their Sinister out of the grave, but you made cards like their Lightning Vortex, their Tribe Infecting Virus, and their Graceful Charity now are less powerful just because you hit a monster out of their grave, and that's really important. And this is the most iffy thing about this deck when I got it. Spirit Reaper wasn't played very much in this format just because of Air Knight Parshath, because if you were forced to sit on a Spirit Reaper while they had a Parshath, you could just lose to straight dog advantage. Like, they could just plus and draw so much that you couldn't recover, and they're eventually going to draw into an answer of that Spirit Reaper. So it's a very iffy card, but sometimes like attacking their hand could be very impactful. But it all depends. Double Book of Moon, 3 was too much, even without Tsukiyomi. You didn't want to have so much setting, because most of the time you're using setting proactively on your own monsters rather than trying to attack over stuff. You did both, but you generally wanted to set your faith to use it again. Double Scapegoat, you didn't want to draw multiples like I was saying earlier. Same with Metamorphosis. Regardless of how powerful the cards are, you had so much draw power that you were always going to get to the card if you wanted it, and the format was so slow, it just boosted that idea even more. Enemy Controller at 1 was very good with Scapegoat and Songen. It was just very good. It could help you push for game in such a slow format. Heavy Storm was staple. Lightning Vortex was, even though it was at 1, it wasn't played very often because even though you could discard it with Sinister and do well, Lightning Vortex lost to the fact that so many cards back in the format were set. There was only a handful of things that they kept face up, so Lightning Vortex was oftenly dead, and it was only good against Scapegoat, but against a Scapegoat it was very good, which is why the person played it. 1 MST was staple. 1 Nobleman I would not agree with ever until the end of time, because there were so much flip effects, including against Faith. You just needed Nobleman all the time, but it worked for this person, but I would never agree with that. Premature Burial was staple, Snatch Steal was staple, and then we got the holy trinity of broken, unfair, +1s, just simple bullshit cards. I don't even need to explain this. If you played Go Control, you know how unfair these cards are. 2 Bottomless. This is interesting because this was only played when this didn't get played until Cybernetic Revolution when Cyber Dragon came out. But the thing about Bottomless is sometimes just bottomlessing the right thing is the best, because if you hit like a mirror match and you hit the Phoenix, it would be banished so it wouldn't get its effect. Even though BLS had priority, just removing it in a format with Premature Burial and the fact that you just couldn't kill it until the end of time is why you played Bottomless. And Breaker also. Breaker and Priority didn't like each other because Priority would only give them the counter. It wouldn't remove the card. It wouldn't destroy the card, so you could just Bottomless and you're safe. Your other back rows are safe. Call of the Haunted staple. Mirror Force was staple. Ring of Destruction was bullshit. And Torrential was staple. I'm not going to go through the side deck. I'll just scan through the cards really quickly. This should have been in the main, but I will say this card. This card is actually pretty funny because it's good against when they're cycling Sinisters, because it's a Mind Crush, except you banish the card you declare, and you get to look at their hand too, so that's pretty cool. And then all this stuff, he sided into a Warrior Engine, which was pretty cool, especially since the fact that Exiled Force had priority back in the day, which was stupid. And then the extra deck. The extra deck was bigger than what you're seeing here. It was way bigger because there was no extra deck limit back in the day. But the main stuff you want to run are the base fusion monsters like 3,000 Eyes, multiple Reapers, multiple Dark Bolter, multiple Shin, multiple Dark Blade. This card you play just in case your opponent played a level 7 and you had Snatch Steal, because this was a powerful Floodgate monster for back in the day, and that was really impactful. And Gatling Dragon. You didn't just make this with BLS, you could also make it with your Phoenix, which was really strong. So that's it, YouTube. This is an alternative to Goat Control. This was actually just the better deck for its time, and I wanna hear your guys' opinion on this. If you ever play Goat Control, this is a good deck you could test out, see how it changed. But that's gonna be it. Thank you all for watching, and remember, Master DinnerFlax will take your soul.